Hi, back again. Dad, I want to hear your story. So, left off on childhood. I thought I'd change the locale for this one. So, it says, who were your best friends during your elementary school days? So, actually, I wrote this one down, so I'm going to just read it from what I wrote and kind of elaborate. I said, believe it or not, I was a very quiet, shy, and awkward boy. I played baseball and soccer, believe that or not, in elementary school. And the baseball squad, those were kids that I didn't go to school with. So it'd be kind of like AAU basketball for you. And then in Washington, CYO for us wasn't basketball, but it was soccer. So the soccer team was a lot of the kids that I went to school with and saw every day. Um, so yeah, I mean, we were all friendly on that squad, but on the soccer team, but that wasn't like um, best buds. My probably my best friend didn't play sports, um, and on the baseball team, had a lot of friends, teammates, but nobody that would like come over after the game and hang out and stuff like that. So, um, like you and Darius would always bug me and his mom about sleepovers after games and stuff like that. We wouldn't. I never did anything like that with my teammates. So, um, yeah. So, and the majority of elementary school, I had one friend. His name was Mike Kaczynski. That was the guy that like I would hang out with, sleepovers. We talk on the phone. Um, play games. He was into all the same stuff that I was into. Star Wars, GI Joe, Transformers, um, and all the other oddball shit that was going on in the '80s. So yeah, we would hang out and um, uh, what is it? We would yes. So okay, we would create adventures with our figures, with our action figures. Play Atari. He had an Atari at his house, which was pretty cool. Um, we'd ride our bikes around the neighborhood. He had a big hill by his house, so we would get on our skateboards and roll down the hill. Um, we just do that shit for hours, man. We just ride around. Um, he was big into WWF, so he really got me into wrestling. And I remember doing sleepovers at his house back when Saturday night's main event was like once every 6 months, maybe once a year. We'd have we'd get to stay up late because it started at like 11 p.m. Um, yeah, so those were good days, man. Those were good days. Yeah. Are you still in contact with any of them? So Mike still lives in Washington, and we reconnected probably like 2016, 2017, around there. I remember just um, I had just gotten sober, and that was a big thing we were talking about because he was in his sobriety kind of on and off. So we reconnected and kind of talked about that. But before that, we probably hadn't spoken, you know, 25, 30 years. Probably, uh, I remember after we moved to California, he came down during the summer. I think it was like probably 1988, probably the year after we got here. He stayed for like a week in the summer, and we did, you know, the touristy shit. We went to the Golden Gate Bridge and San Francisco and stuff like that. Uh, but yeah, after that, we just totally lost touch. And then through socials, we kind of reconnected a little bit, but then actually had a over the phone conversation for the first time in, like I said, probably 2017. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. But and before I, this is weird. Okay, so before we moved to California, he was like, "We should become blood brothers." I was like, "All right." So we just got a little like thorn off a rose or something, pricked our fingers and put them together, and we're like, "All right, we're blood brothers now." And I probably didn't think about that again since the day after it happened or something like that. But dude, whenever we talk now, he still brings it up like it's very important to him. I mean, he never had brothers or sisters growing up. He was an only child. Um, Single mom. She lived with her parents, so his grandparents were around. Um, so yeah, it was the four of them. Never knew what happened to his dad. Never asked him. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's funny, man. He still brings up the blood brother thing, and it's crazy. It's meant a lot to him. Okay, what do you miss most about being a kid? Um, so it's like like I said before, like when I was a kid growing up, elementary school, like in Washington, um, I felt like I had a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety growing up, and that was just from because the kids in my school were very clicky. You know what I mean? And I wasn't part of their cliques, so like it kind of get made fun of. I remember getting in a fight one time with older kids. Um, this kid threw me down, put me in a headlock, and I remember grabbing his ear and just like ripping off his ear. I don't think it literally came off, but yeah, I pulled his ear until he let go, and then that was kind of the end of that. But yeah, that was the type of shit that just happened. I mean, I don't know. So yeah, there was stress and anxiety and worry a lot, um, but there was also a lot of contentment with just kind of being on my own. Um, so like I said, playing with the action figures and making adventures and kind of getting lost in those. Um, yeah, we had so before obviously the internet and streaming and all that. When I was a kid, we had like they had storybooks, like Star Wars storybooks. It was in an audio tape that went with it that kind of described the story and had like intercut like vocals from the movies. But you also had a book, a picture book that you would follow along with. So it was like kind of recreating the movies in my mind. That was I remember a very comforting thing, and there was a lot of other things that I had growing up, like records, like just stories, kind of like radio stories. I guess it would have actors as the characters, but it was all just audio, and they'd have a narrator to kind of push the story along, but then you'd have these people talking. So, and these were like Spider-Man things or like Hulk or whatever. um and with those were you had the story in your brain, in your mind, while they were explaining what was happening. So you know that kind of imagination, I guess, is what I miss. Kind of getting lost in those things. I guess just being a kid, being able to just hop on your bike and ride around and feel the wind in your face, and it's just kind of peaceful, I guess. Um, what's the biggest trouble you ever got into as a kid? Being a boy growing up, I don't ever really remember like getting in big trouble. I didn't really, I wasn't mischievous like that. So, obviously started getting into more shit as I got older into high school years. But yeah, not, I don't know. I'd smack my sister around and get in trouble. Sounds bad, but no, I mean, yeah, you play fight and I don't know, dude. Like I said, I wasn't very mischievous growing up. Didn't get into a lot of issues. Try to actually avoid stuff like that. Just kind of being, yeah, I don't know, not afraid to get in trouble. I took things very seriously. Like when I was told, don't do that, I didn't do that. And that obviously changes when you get older, but yeah, I don't know. I was a pretty good kid, you know what I mean? So, anywho, all right, well, we'll wrap this one up and get ready for the next part of chapter 2. Oh, pooch. All right.